Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Breaking down silos and unifying all of their operational and experience data is a top priority for many companies today. As you listen to this podcast, you will be able to realize where your company has data silos and how you can improve your data integration. Hi everyone, I'm Sushmita and I'm back with another episode of the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Our guest this episode is Joseph Ifiegbu, co-founder and CEO at eqtble. Welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Sushmita. How are you doing?
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so before we start with the topic today, it would be great if you can brief us about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me. I'm Joseph. I am one of the co-founders and CEO of eqtble.
Right.
And eqtble is a HR technology or HR analytics platform. And what we do is we help organizations really understand or make sense of their people data, right? So, I mean, these days, as you probably see, there are so many tools out there in the market, so many HR tools. For different things, And what we do is we connect to the different HR tools, bring the data into one place,
right,
and help companies tell the story about their employees. Typically, because of the amount of tools that are out there, there's this issue of silos around, right? So this tool for performance, this tool for HRS, ATS, survey, and so many of those. And so it's made it hard for companies to, tell one cohesive story about their employees. And that's something that we're trying to solve for.
Right. So, and before eqtble also, you garnered an extensive experience in the field of analytics, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. So, eqtble was something that, we thought about during our time in one of our previous companies. So my background is in maths and statistics. So that was my educational background. And I worked as a data scientist pretty much my whole career, right? So I'd worked in healthcare, I'd worked in research, I'd worked in sports analytics. I worked for Arsenal for a few years there. And I worked in e-commerce retail for Toys R Us as a data scientist as well. And then about, 5.5 or so years ago, I, jumped into people analytics by mistake. I saw this opening in people analytics and I was curious. I'm like, what is this? I didn't even quite know what people analytics was at the time. And I saw it and I applied, and luckily I got the role at WeWork, and that was it really. That was my foray into people analytics. And then from there, once I, got into that, I ended up building and leading the team at WeWork. Alongside my current co-founder, Gabe. We built the team there. I was there for about 3 years. I left and I went to Snapchat, and I was there for about a year, and I left to start eqtble. So, it's been an incredible process.
Pretty much into analytics all the time in your career, actually.
Yeah. No, I've always loved analytics, right? Like it's one of those things where you're solving a problem, right? Like you're trying to surface something that isn't there. And so I've always loved being in the analytics space, but being in people analytics has been the most interesting by far because, you can see how the decisions that you make as an analyst or as a data scientist or as a leader really affects people almost in real time.
Yes. And as you mentioned, Joseph, that HR analytics has become a necessary tool to predict different trends to ensure that business leaders make informed decisions. Moreover, data silos have become a major concern for all organizations. As we venture into this topic today, let's first define the term. So it would be great if you can explain the term data silos to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, in the simplest way possible, I mean, data silos are just, data systems or data systems essentially that are separated from each other. That's just the simplest way to put it, right? That's separated and don't really talk or don't communicate with each other, right? So, for example, could be, you have a system that does your performance analysis or just a performance review. Then you have another system that does your compensation. And those two systems never talk to each other. There is no connection between those two systems. And so that makes it hard that if you were trying to tell a story that involved performance and compensation, you would have to figure out a way to download the data or connect it or do some sort of connection to be able to tell that story that you want to tell. So that's simply what it is. It's that separation and then no way of really communicating between both systems, I would say.
So it is a problem for HR. Yeah. So as a leader in the analytics field, how do you see, data silos, creating challenges for the HRs?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? If you looked, back a few years ago, maybe 10 years or so ago, it was this centralized model where pretty much, you bought one tool, right? And let's say you bought maybe Oracle or something like that. And you used it for everything. I mean, it was your HRIS, it was your ATS, you used it for performance, you used it for just the different things in the HR. Particularly over the last 5 years, it's become quite something where now people are moving away from that centralized model to this decentralized model where people are using this best-in-class tools. So now all of a sudden, you're using, let's say, Workday for your HRIS, you're using Greenhouse or Lever for your ATS, and then you're using a Lattice for your performance, and then you're using Qualtrics for survey or Qualtramp. You have all these different tools now that people are using, right, for these different things because they're trying to use the best in class. But okay, yes, you've solved the problem of maybe using the best in class, but you've introduced this problem of, okay, well, there's this data silos because your people data is in your Workday, but your performance is in your Lattice. So if I'm trying to tell a performance story, how do I join these two data sets together, right? And so then that's led to this whole thing of there's been this gap between having systems and data and actually having insights, and that's now become a problem, right? We have much data than ever before, but now we don't even know what to do with it because the data is just sitting there, and there's not usually an easy way to bring everything together and tell one cohesive story. So that's not the new problem. So we solved one problem, but we introduced a new problem, and the new problem continues to compound. So that's a big problem that we're starting to see now because of this new way of doing things.
Yeah. So Joseph, now that we have talked about the problem, let's also talk about the solutions.
Yeah.
How can an organization get rid of the problems related to data silos?
Yeah. I mean, so what we did at WeWork in my time there was we built. I mean, that's why they hired me, right? And then brought in Gabe and the rest of the team at the time. We had so many systems. I mean, we had Workday, Greenhouse. We had Lattice, we had Qualtramp, we had Qualtrics, we had quite a few tools. And these are all great tools, incredible tools. And so, that enabled people to do their jobs. And so what we had to do was, okay, well, since people are using these tools, we have to figure out a way to bring in all this data. And so one of the ways people, if you have the time and the money is, okay, well, I'll build the internal solution, right? And so that's the strategy that we took. Well, but that took us about over a year and a half, and we spent about $2 million doing this, right? So we built all the pipelines internally to connect to all the systems, brought it into our database, and then we did the whole visualization using Looker and Tableau, and it was all these things we did, right? And so that's something we did. So if you have time, if you have the luxury of time and money, it's one of those things. There's this always build versus buy question. Some people will say, no, I want to build, and so we built. However, it was in doing that we realized something, right? Myself and Gabe, we were like, look, we had the luxury of time and money to do this, right? But most companies don't have $2 million sitting around to hire.
Don't have that. Exactly. That was what I was going to point out. Yeah.
Yeah, an 18-person team. Most companies don't have that kind of money, right? And so is there a solution that can do this for companies in a very quick and cost-efficient way? And we started to look at it, and we started to, have conversations with people in the industry. And there wasn't anything that really satisfied me, right? And my co-founder, we're not really satisfied with what we saw. And we're like, you know what? This is it. We are going to build a solution. We are going to build equitable. And obviously, when you say you're going to build something, it took us another like 1 to 2 years, to really do it. But that was what led to us being equitable. We like, look, we want to be able to connect to all these different systems, bring the data into the platform, into one generic data model, and then deliver a front end whereby you can actually tell a story about your employee base in a cost-efficient way, and pretty quickly at that. And so that was what we did, and that's what we have managed to do over the last couple of years. And so that's the solution. So problem. Best-in-class tools has led to data silos. Solution, well, equitable, right? Cost-efficient. Like we deliver. We do all the connections, the integrations. We connect to pretty much all the main HR technology systems, and then we deliver this front end in a pretty quick to insights, quick way, and then you can see the insights. You can tell the story about your employees. So that's basically what we've done.
Brilliant. Joseph, so what I can understand is overall with data silos, it becomes very difficult, to maintain a culture of transparency and trust as well in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, even without data silos, right? Like the issue of transparency and trust has always been something that companies have battled with, right? Like it's one of those things. And so I think that's really more stemmed from the fact that companies are capturing all this data, right? And what are they doing with the data? They're not telling employees or like what they're going to do. I think one of the things that I've seen that was really done really well, that I really loved, and something that I would say and I would recommend to companies, is something else we did at Snap. When we capture data, for example, for survey, our legal team and our just the executive team, legal team, HR team, we made sure they made sure that we stated what we're going to do with the data, right? So we're saying, hey, we're capturing this survey data and we're going to do an analysis based on this response. It's not going to be individualized, those kind of things. This is just to see at a high level what the trends are, and based on the trends, we will see what we need to improve upon, right? So we give specifics. And we're not going to do anything else apart from what we stated that we're going to do with the data. And so because of that, we got high response rates, and we did the analysis and we delivered and said, here's what the issues were. And then the leadership had conversations with the team and said, okay, well, here's the things that you've said are issues. Here's how we're going to fix it. Here are the steps we're going to take. And so letting the employees hold you accountable for what you said you're going to do, for the results of your survey. And then by the next round, you say, this is the results we had in the last round. Here are the steps that we took. And then we'll see improvements. We saw improvements in the survey results. So those are the things. I think that helps build trust. But when you just capture data, people don't know what you're doing with it, then it's hard to really trust anything because you're not being transparent in terms of what you do. And so I think one of the antidotes for lack of trust is really communication. Is really communicating, saying what you're gonna do, say what you're gonna do, say what you're doing, and say what you did. or like really just communicating over and over and over again. And I think over time that helps build that employee trust. Regardless of data silos, right? Like it's just like, and obviously with data silos, there's so much more now. There's so much data. There's so much. Okay, you're capturing data in all these different forms and formats. What is happening? So that even compounds the problem even more. But if you communicate what you're going to do, that really helps with the solution.
Yeah, Joseph, thank you so much for sharing this knowledge about data silos, and it would be very helpful for me and for my listeners as well. So lastly, would like to know how to prepare for the future of HR.
Oh, man. Well, no one could have predicted what would have happened. I mean, we knew we were going to, this ability to really work from anywhere, right? But but in our minds, it was probably what 10, 20 years. It wasn't like something that we thought was going to happen. But I think the pandemic really accelerated something that was already going to happen by almost 10 years. I mean, at least, right? And so we're now in a place where people are working from all parts of the world. I mean, some people are working from like beautiful places like Bali, and I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. It's like, what I'm saying? And so, but I think this is it's not going to change, right? Like it's not, we're not going back to the fully office thing. That's something that I think everyone should just really just accept. I think more and more we're going to see, new things, like we're starting to see that in places in Europe, like this 4-day work week, right? Whereby we're saying, look, we're giving people, you're working 4 days out of the week, set times, and we're seeing things like that more and more. So I think there's going to be more flexibility in terms of how people work, because people work so differently. Like, for example, myself, I'm pretty much useless in the mornings. My brain doesn't really wake up until the afternoon evenings. So in the mornings, I'm, checking emails, doing meetings. And then really in the evenings is when I really start to work. So this set times of you have to work 9 to 5, it's really going to change, right? It's changing. And so I think people should just really embrace that. And then more and more, there's, it's almost like this gig economy where people are going to be working more on projects as opposed to this set, like, oh, you work for this one company and that's it. I think you're going to see more and more people, more and more people
engaged in different projects.
Yeah, exactly. You come work for this company, do the projects, leave, work for this other company. I think we're going to see more and more of that. At the end of the day, it's more about flexibility in terms of how people work, because, it's just, that's what it is, right? Like, it's just kind of a natural evolution of how people work. This is the way we work now. It's not the way we worked 50 or 60 years ago. It's changed, right? So I think it's going to keep evolving. So I think that's something I can say that I can see in the future.
Nice. So in one liner, it would be like a lot of flexibility for doing your work and not working for one project, and without hampering your productivity.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
Right. So what would be your suggestions to your listeners today, Joseph?
I think keep an open mind. Really keep an open mind, right? Like, they said people, certain leaders I've even seen, that were just like, no, everyone has to come back to work, or this is how things has to be done. It's always been done like this. I think one of the enemies of progress is it's always been done like this, so we're always going to do it like this. It's such a bad mentality to have. I think people, like, things change, right? Like, situations change. And so my advice would just be keep an open mind, keep having conversations with people, and then just stay adaptable, right? Just be adaptable to change. I really think that's just one of the best ways to grow. So that would be my advice.
Brilliant. Lastly, how can our listeners reach out to you?
True LinkedIn, right? Twitter, Joseph Ifiegbu. It's the same pretty much everywhere. LinkedIn, Twitter, email, right? It's all really the same. So feel free, if you ping me on LinkedIn, is one of the easiest ways. I'm visually on there. I'll pretty much respond and really go from there. I love to chat about anything HR analytics. People love to help out in any way I can. So feel free to reach out.
It was great talking to you, Joseph. Thanks for joining me today. And thanks for being a part of the Vantage HR Influencers podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.